2 years, the bodies of black children had been found in the woods, then the rivers of Atlanta, Georgia. In all, more than 24 victims, most of them strangled. By May 1981, the police and FBI were hiding in the brush, beside and below the river bridges. This was to be the last night, almost the last hour.
I heard the splash.
Bob Campbell, a police recruit, jumped to his feet, down beside the Chattahoochee River.
I was really startled. It sounded like a body entering water.
He looked up at the bridge.
And I saw brake lights of a car come on. I saw red lights. The car started slowly moving away from me across the bridge.
Campbell radioed the other team members up above him.
I asked, did a car stop on the bridge? Because, I couldn't believe what I saw. And each person told me they didn't see it.
Then a policeman in a chase car, hidden on the other side, came on the radio.
He just said, the car is pulling into the parking lot here, turning around in front of me. I started coming back across the bridge, coming back in my direction.
This is that white station wagon. Police followed it and stopped it nearby. FBI agent Mike McComas rushed to the scene. The driver was standing by the highway.
He was talking with the officers, saw a black male. He had on a baseball hat, had on glasses.
The young man was Wayne Williams, about to turn 23. A self-anointed music talent scout who slept days and roamed the city at night. McComas invited Williams over to his car.
He got in the car and I said, do you know why we're here? And he immediately said, yes, it's about the missing children. And that kind of stunned me, and I said, well, what do you know about that? And he goes, well, he said, I don't think that the various news agencies are covering it adequately. Do you?
2 weeks later, this headline would break the news of that night on the bridge. Wayne Williams would be sent to prison to serve 2 life sentences for murder. At first glance, he hardly looks like a serial killer. Not much more than 5.5 feet tall, barely 150 pounds, now in his 50s and growing bald.
The bottom line is, nobody ever testified or even claimed that they saw me strike another person, choke another person, stab, beat, or kill, or hurt anybody, because I didn't.
This is the first time Wayne Williams has talked on TV in at least a decade.
Why do you think you were convicted?
Fear.
What do you mean?
Atlanta at the time was in a panic. They wanted any suspect that they could find, and let's just be honest, it had to be a black person, because if it had been a white suspect, Atlanta probably would have gone up in flames. It came very close to that.
Do you think you'll ever be free?
No, Dot, it's not a matter of if to me, it's a matter of when.
Some 30 years after Wayne Williams' trial and conviction, there is still debate and some doubt. This time, you can be the judge and the jury. We'll lay out the evidence on both sides, and you'll hear from Wayne Williams at length. Then we'll invite you to reach your own verdict: guilty, innocent, or a third choice, not proven. The first clue was found on a dead boy's tennis shoes. The victim was Eric Middlebrooks, his body left here in a rainy alley, a foster child who rode his bicycle away one night on an errand and was dead by dawn. Detective Bob Buffington saw something red stuck to Eric's tennis shoe.
And I noticed in the flap of the edge of this shoe, this tuft of what to me appeared to be wool. And that was it. We could find no other evidence.
Back at homicide, Buffington showed the fibers to his superiors.
The lieutenant made a big joke out of it and told the rest of the squad that if I went over to the lieutenant's house and cleaned out the lint trap in his dryer, we could probably clear out all the cases in the city of Atlanta.
Still, Buffington sent the fibers to the State Crime Laboratory. A young forensic scientist, Larry Peterson, took a look.
So why was a fiber that was stuck in the crack of a shoe Why was that
Because it was
important?
somewhat loosely there, and people don't normally have tufts or carpet fibers loosely stuck in their shoe.
From those few thin threads, Peterson would begin to build a case to try to catch a killer.
How many fibers across the board did you look at every day in this case when the case really started getting busy? 100, 500, 1,000?
Literally, there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of fibers there, depending upon the case.
In the spring of 1980, no one wanted to believe a serial killer was loose in the city, even when Bob Buffington spotted a disturbing pattern.
There had been a sharp increase in the number of children under the age of 14 who had been killed.
When he told his boss at Homicide, the major threatened to transfer him.
And I truly think that they were afraid that there would be a panic.
It was this mother, after the loss of her 9-year-old son, who finally forced police to listen, but not until almost a year after her boy died. Camille Bell and her children lived in these project apartments, poor to the eye, but rich in mind and spirit. Yusef Bell was an honors student in the gifted program at school. On a warm October Sunday in 1979, he walked away on an errand to buy snuff for an elderly lady downstairs.
He went barefooted in a pair of brown shorts. He got to the store, he bought the snuff, he started back home.
Less than half a block from this store, Yusef Bell stepped off this curb and vanished.
And nobody saw anybody do anything or anything, but they did see him come back across the street. And that's the last that we saw him.
Camille Bell called the police. They came and said they'd write a report. That's all. Days went by. Camille waited with 2 older children and Yusef's 3-year-old sister.
And so she is terrified. If he can go to the store and they can steal him, then she doesn't want to leave the house. She doesn't want to do anything.
Camille hid her own fear from her children.
And you've got to hold them together so you can't act as scared as you are.
The body of Yusef Bell was found in an abandoned schoolhouse.
His body would not turn up for another month. Yusef Bell had been strangled.
All of the what could have been, should have been, and probably would have been was taken away. And we'll never know now because somebody decided that it was all right to just kill a little kid because they wanted to.
For a long time, the 3-year-old would look for Yusef every time it was a foggy day.
And we'd go out into the fog, and she would go as far as she could into the fog. And I'd say, come back here, and she'd say, I got to go find my brother. And she said, the clouds came down, so Yusef can come down.
The child, her mother said, had confused the fog with heaven.
Still ahead, the boy who was too brave.
I mean, he was like, man, I want to find this killer and get this reward money.
A drive-by threat against the FBI chief's child.
Some guy in a pickup truck said, I'm gonna get you, nigga.
And in the end, the curious question of the CIA.
When you're 19 years old, you're saying you work for the CIA. You've been recruited.
I'll let the document speak for itself. We're not going to comment on it.
Then.
Do you know how to kill someone with a chokehold? That's a yes or no answer.
No, it's not.
Yes,
no,
it is, actually.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Do you know how to kill someone with a chokehold?
No, it's not.
In the spring of 1980, police were still reluctant to listen to Camille Bell.
Children were dying on the streets of Atlanta in the daytime.
Among them, Jeffrey Mathis, only 10. Like Yusef Bell, he walked down the street on an errand to this gas station to buy cigarettes for his mother. She never saw him again.
What we had here was a predator, and what he was looking for was somebody who was cut off from the herd. And if you don't realize you're in trouble until you're in trouble, then you have no way of getting out.
It would be another year before Jeffrey Mathis's body was found in a woods, miles from his home. His mother would join Camille Bell in forming a committee to confront the city's leaders.
The reaction of the police was that we were overreacting and that there was no serial killer.
Even though, by now, 6 black children were dead. 4 others were missing.
Perhaps we were like distraught parents that really needed everyone's sympathy, but nobody needed to do anything.
For years, it has been a dirty little secret among the press and the police. Deaths of blacks draw less attention than deaths of whites.
Nobody cared. So you could have several killings go on, and if the people were poor, then no one discovered there was a serial killing. If you were black and poor, then really nobody looked, especially if you were black and poor and Southern.
Police were slow to recognize these deaths were different. Many of the bodies were left in the woods, far from home, unlike most murder victims who are found where they fall.
Unsolved murders of children is very rare. If a 9-year-old got killed, it was because somebody slapped him across the room, he hit his head, and he died.
Police did not create a task force until a year after the first murders began. FBI profiler Roy Hazelwood came down to help. 3 detectives drove him around the city and turned into Jeffrey Mathis' neighborhood.
As soon as we turned onto that street, everything stopped. The guy cutting the grass stopped. Guys playing dominoes on the porch stopped. I said, "What's going on?" I said, "Everything stopped." They said laughingly, "That's because we have a honky in the car."
John Glover, who took over as FBI chief in Atlanta that summer, says that's why he and Hazelwood decided the killer had to be black.
The killer is someone who is invisible in the black community. And who is invisible in the black community but another black person?
Welcome Harris was one of the first task force detectives. He knew it had to be someone who went unnoticed.
We felt like it was somebody who could come in the neighborhood and get these children and not draw attention to themselves.
The question of which race struck a raw nerve. It had been only a dozen years since the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King. On the surface, Atlanta was a well-integrated city. Beneath the surface, it remained separate and unequal.
My prayer and the prayer of everybody in there was we wanted the person to be black. And the reason why you wanted to be black, I knew what it would do to this town if it had been a white person or somebody else of another race.
In the black community in the early 80s, a black serial killer was unheard of. All the classic serial killers were white, never black.
Doesn't mean it didn't have one there.
Today, black serial killers are not rare. In 2009, here in Cleveland, as well as in Milwaukee and Los Angeles, each time the accused serial killer turned out to be African American. Dr. Eric Hickey is a psychologist who keeps track of serial killers.
Overall, in my study, 1 out of every 5 serial killers is African American. In the past, since 1995, over 40% are African American. We're finally saying, you know what, blacks do this too.
There were whites who fed the fear in Atlanta. As FBI chief, John Glover had moved into this upper-class white neighborhood. His 12-year-old son was playing outside one afternoon.
some guy in a pickup truck, he was out in the yard, in our side yard, we were on a corner, we lived in, had a corner lot, you know, said, "I'm gonna get you, nigga," as he was driving by.
Kasim Reed, seen in these childhood photos, was only 10 when the first two bodies were found in the woods close to his home in the summer of 1979.
My life did change.
How so?
Not out as late as you used to be, not able to ride your bike unaccompanied.
In 2010, Reed would become the mayor of Atlanta. But back then, as the youngest boy in his family, his teenage brothers were his protectors.
And I didn't move without my brothers for about a year.
The bulk of the victims were boys like you.
You're right.
Your age.
You're right.
Black boys.
Yes.
Did you personally feel afraid?
I can't honestly say that I really felt afraid, except for at moments. You would have a van slow down, and everybody was very mindful of vans at the time.
People were suspicious of everybody, and they were afraid. And the children, you had children walking the street, car go by, you could see some of them were in fear.
And for good reason. The murders were about to increase to a body almost every week.
Coming up, a creature of the night.
Being an ex-news reporter and all, you know, nighttime is me. That's the time I'm out most of the time.
And a mystery within a mystery.
He walked into the back of the studio and he had horrible scratches on his arms. And he said he had fallen into a bush.
Many of the children who died were poor, who earned spending money carrying groceries, running errands for others. Or, like Luby Jeter, peddling car deodorizers outside this supermarket on New Year's weekend, 1981. His mother worried about his going off alone.
He said he was a big boy. They had to catch him first.
Luby was a good student, a sophomore in high school. A witness at the shopping center that day saw Luby with a man and helped a police artist draw this sketch, a man with a baseball cap, perhaps a scar on his cheek. Luby never came home.
I believe he'd been kidnapped.
Police searched the woods around Atlanta. They did not find Luby. Instead, police found two other bodies. Young boys who had disappeared 10 miles and a month apart, yet both left here at the same dumping ground. The number of known dead, now 15. The unsolved murders of so many children had become front-page news around the nation and the world.
This is the reward.
The city announced a $100,000 reward, soon to grow to $500,000. The task force was swamped with sketches of suspects, none of them alike, many suggested by psychics. At the state crime lab, Larry Peterson was sifting through thousands of fibers: nylon, rayon, acrylic, acetate.
Is it like looking
multiple
or smaller?
It's like looking for multiple needles in multiple haystacks.
Then, in January 1981, a breakthrough. Peterson realized they were seeing one green carpet fiber with a unique shape. This is a cross-section of that fiber, magnified many times.
This particular fiber had two very, very large lobes and one short lobe.
The lobes are the three ends of the boomerang shape.
The shape was the most distinctive feature of the fiber.
He showed me a slide taken from another carpet.
This is a single tuft from the carpet, cut in cross-section.
Yeah, I can't tell that's green.
That's enough.
Even putting the tiny fibers under the microscope didn't help me.
How can you tell what color this is? Because in this green carpet, because of that light green, it looks very whitish.
The color is seen microscopically is not going to be identical to what the overall carpet would be.
Instead, an even more sophisticated microscope
So let me just open this up.
can separate colors to identify a specific fiber. We took another look.
Oh, now you're talking.
Now, Peterson knew what to look for.
When I was looking at the fiber at first, I had no idea who had made it. I just knew it was very distinctive, and I would recognize it instantly.
But he didn't know where to find it. Wayne Williams was not yet on anyone's radar. He had freelanced as a TV cameraman who shot fires and overnight news. He told us,
You know, I know the streets a bit loud. I've been around a while. Being an ex-news reporter and all, you know, nighttime is me. That's the time I'm out most of the time.
now almost 23, a wannabe music producer, he was trying to form a singing group modeled after the Jackson 5. In fact, the afternoon Lubie Jeter disappeared, Williams says this receipt shows he had an alibi, auditioning young singers from 4:30 to 8:30 that evening.
The studio was a small demo studio.
Kathy Andrews was co-owner of that studio.
To my best recollection, he auditioned young kids for a group that never existed. They were roughly as young as 8 and as old, for the kids, they were as old as 11 or 12.
Now living in another state, Kathy Andrews did not want her face shown because of what she saw on another day at her studio.
At one point in time, when Wayne came for one of the sessions, he walked into the back of the studio and he had horrible scratches on his arms.
Deep and painful, crisscrossing both arms.
It was more this way and that 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 way. And they were angry looking. And when I looked at him, the first words out of my mouth was, "Oh, Wayne, what happened? That looks awful." And he said he had fallen into a bush.
15-year-old Terry Pugh died late that January. His body dropped by the roadside in a rural county 20 miles from home. He had been strangled. His mother.
Whoever killed him, he had a tussle with him because he had scratches all over.
It gives me chills down my spine still.
To this day, Kathy Andrews does not believe Wayne's explanation.
He did not fall in a bush. It was, after you realized it, it was fairly obvious. I mean, and I don't know what else could have caused that kind of wound on his arm.
The intervals between murders were shrinking. 19 days from Lubie Jeter's disappearance until Terry Pugh's death. Then 15 days until the next victim. Soon 13, then 11. And before long, a body a week. FBI profiler Roy Hazelwood says this is not unusual for serial killers.
They come to believe that they, in fact, are almost immune to mistakes, if you will, and they can take greater risks because it's more exciting, and because they're so superior, they don't have to worry about the inferior police catching them.
After a month, Lubie Jeter's body would be found in the woods. The boy left naked except for scraps of underwear. The medical examiner would testify Jeter apparently had been killed by, quote, a chokehold around the neck, a forearm across the neck. It's a question we'll have reason to ask Wayne Williams by the end of all of this.
It's actually a very simple question. Can you kill someone with a chokehold? And when you were 19 years old...
You probably could under the right circumstances.
I know for a fact I could not.
When we return, the boy who wanted to catch a killer.
The body was indeed another victim of Atlanta's child killer or killers.
I just know right away it was his body. Oh, my God, Mom.
And later, a failed lie detector test.
It surprised him that he didn't beat that polygraph test. He was convinced he could beat a polygraph test.
There's yet another twist in the missing and murdered children case.
Atlanta is a city of frustrations and fears.
As the number of missing and murdered children grows.
That the body was indeed another victim of Atlanta's child killer or killers. We're told that the child...
Patrick Baltazar was the kid who was convinced he could catch a killer.
He was like, man, I want to find this killer and get this reward money, and I'm going to buy my mom a house, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to find this killer.
His stepmother, Sheila Baltazar, was worried.
For a 10, 11-year-old child to be talking like that was just like, wow, you know, where's his mind at?
Patrick was a latchkey child, living unsupervised with an older brother in a project apartment near downtown.
He was very streetwise.
He stayed out late at night, often at the Omni Center, now the headquarters of CNN, but back then a hotel complex with an indoor skating rink and a game room for kids.
And that's where he spent a lot of his time at the games arcade.
Wayne Williams was known to frequent the Omni, passing out these flyers as a talent scout to offer auditions to boys from age 11 on up.
15 kids are dead. 2 others are officially missing and listed as part...
By early February 1981, more than a dozen young African-American boys had been found dead, many dumped in the woods around Atlanta.
I was very fearful. My God.
Sheila Baltazar pleaded to send Patrick back home to the rest of his family in rural Louisiana.
If I had somewhere to send my son, I would have sent my son.
One evening, a white man in a big car appeared to threaten Patrick and a small friend.
The little boy said that Patrick said, man, that might be the killer.
Patrick used a payphone to call police. He told them, a man was chasing me and my friend in a brown Cadillac.
Well, actually, they thought it was a crank phone call. They didn't send a car out.
This is a sketch the other boy provided to police after Patrick was dead. 2 weeks later, on February 6th, Patrick stopped by the restaurant where his father worked to ask for money, then walked back toward the Omni. He never made it home that night.
I'm like, he didn't come home? Oh, my God. That was the first thing popped in my head. Missing. Murdered. Oh, my God.
The Atlanta Missing Persons Bureau continued their hunt for this missing child. 11-year-old...
One day seemed like it was a week. That was the longest search in the world.
It was almost 2 p.m. when maintenance man Ishmael Strickland found the lifeless figure of a young black boy lying in some bushes.
On the 7th day, a maintenance man spotted a body tossed down into the woods behind a parking lot at a suburban office complex.
The bank was fairly steep.
Medical examiner Joseph Burton had to hold on to a rope to get down to the scene.
He had a ligature mark on his neck, like if somebody had a ligature and they were behind you or off to the side behind you, and they close their hands or fists together and pull the ligature, basically.
In other words, killed from behind.
Most likely, yes.
All right, let me place another sample on this side.
State Crime Lab scientist Larry Peterson attended the autopsy.
I can recall one autopsy pulling a fiber off of one of the victims. It was a green carpet fiber, and mounted the sample on the slide, went over and looked under the microscope and went, it's the same one.
You knew right away.
I knew right then.
And it became apparent that the body was indeed another victim of Atlanta's child killer or killers. Again,
local television carried these pictures live from the crime scene.
As it was studied, it became apparent it was one of the 3 children listed as missing. We're told that the child's body, again, had not...
Sheila Baltazar got a call from her mother.
She say, they found another body. She say, I really feel like this is Patrick's body here, you know.
Oh my God. But if he is one of the 3 missing children, the chances are strong that he was 11-year-old Patrick Baltazar, who disappeared 1 week...
Mrs. Baltazar and her husband went to the funeral home to identify their child.
They told me he had struggled, you know, for his life. And seeing the print, you know, the rope print across his neck, all the way around in the front.
At Patrick Baltazar's funeral, she would insist on an open casket.
I just wanted the world to see that this child could have been anybody's child.
Patrick's fifth-grade classmates wrote a poem, read at his funeral. This from local TV coverage that day.
Patrick Balthazar, our schoolmate, you came to school, though sometimes late, but you were never mean to anyone. You tried to help people and thought it was fun. Then one night, one terrible night, you didn't come home, not even at daylight. Something's happened to that boy, the people said. Patrick is missing. Is Patrick dead? We cried some,
and we bowed
our heads,
and hoped for your safety, and prayers were said. Oh God, please bring back that missing boy. When he returns, we will shout for joy. The police and the news people came and went. In all our hearts was no content. No one could rest until we knew whatever had happened to you. Then one day your body was found out in the woods on the cold, cold ground. Someone killed you and dumped you there. It was a mad, cruel person who did not care. There was not a word about how you died. It is no wonder that we all cried. Patrick, we miss you and wish you knew how much your schoolmates grieve for you.
Just ahead, the Klan under suspicion.
It was an entire family of brothers that were involved in the Klan.
And then a disappearing nylon cord.
Could have been the murder weapon, as far as I know.
In February 1981, a troublesome tip reached the police. A man involved in the Ku Klux Klan could be Atlanta's serial killer.
Atlanta was about to explode, and here was information potentially that the Klan could have been doing this.
Bob Ingram with the GBI, Georgia's Bureau of Investigation, got the case.
It was an entire family of brothers that were involved in the Klan that were the focus of this particular intelligence information.
An informant said one brother had threatened Luby Jeter, the child found dead only weeks before. The Klan associate lived here on a dead-end street in the railroad town of Mountain View, on the outskirts of Atlanta.
We're tapping telephones. We heard a lot of rhetoric. We heard a lot of racial slurs.
On one wiretap, the detectives heard this said, "Go find you another little kid." The GBI followed the four brothers for almost 2 months.
These family members were under surveillance at that time, physical surveillance, where we had an eyeball on them.
In those 2 months, 6 more black youths would disappear and die. Detectives saw nothing to link the Klan to them.
If somebody was in there with a van or 2 or 3 men who, you know, to grab somebody and dump them in the back of a van, people would have noticed if they were white.
The brothers were called in. They took lie detector tests and passed.
They were polygraphed and cleared as to their involvement in the killing of Atlanta's children.
Clearing the Klan didn't stop the murders. JoJo Bell was one of the victims who vanished during the surveillance. He used to hang out at this seafood carryout place. Manager Richard Harp.
You come here and do anything, I'll give him $1 to. Just long enough he get money to go to show or get money to buy stuff at the store or something like that.
JoJo Bell, unrelated to Yusef Bell, came by Captain Pegg's one last time.
About 3:30, 4 o'clock Monday, he came by and stuck his head in the door. He said, "Richard, I'm going to shoot basketball. I'll see you later." Throwed his hand up, went on up the street.
To a schoolyard basketball court like this. This witness, Eugene Laster, knew JoJo and saw him leave the game. He said JoJo left in a station wagon that looked like this. Laster testified he got in the car, got in Wayne's car. In court, Laster would identify Wayne Williams as the driver.
Eugene Laster.
Okay.
He's pretty much an eyewitness. Said that you gave a ride to JoJo Bell in your station wagon.
Okay.
Did you?
No, I did not.
You never gave a ride to JoJo Bell?
No, I did not.
Williams did not deny he was the driver. He instead insisted his passenger had to be someone else. JoJo Bell was never to be seen again.
But it would be horrendous if another child dies, period.
A week later, Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra came to Atlanta for a concert to benefit the children. The photographer up on stage, that's Wayne's father, Homer Williams, with the black newspaper, Atlanta World.
How come you got no tuxedo on there? You're going to come up here on the stage looking like that there.
Backstage with Sammy Davis Jr. in a photo which made the front page, that's future Mayor Kasim Reed.
I remember that. It's so cool meeting Frank Sinatra.
As a young child, Reed would help the volunteers searching Atlanta's woods every Saturday.
We literally would walk through wooded areas, chaperone, and we would walk for a period of time until about an hour before nightfall.
But now, a new twist in the murders. Patrick Baltazar, the 20th victim, would be the last child to turn up in a wooded area. A day or two later, an official would tell reporters fibers and dog hairs were being collected from the victim's clothing. The next child to die would be found in a river, wearing nothing but underpants. Fewer clues now for Larry Peterson.
We're talking maybe a dozen or dozens of fibers as opposed to hundreds or potentially 1,000 fibers.
The 13-year-old victim was found beneath this bridge over the South River in Atlanta's suburbs. A driver crossing that bridge earlier in the week saw a man leaning over the railing. It turned out to be the same afternoon JoJo Bell disappeared. At trial, the witness said the man was Wayne Williams. JoJo's body would not be found for 7 more weeks, until Easter Sunday. It had floated far down the South River, almost into another county.
He also had nothing on but underwear, basically.
Medical examiner Joseph Burton went out in a boat to retrieve the boy.
We've got the body wrapped in a sheet. I'm one with the shirt off.
Dr. Burton ruled both JoJo and the other boy found in the river had been asphyxiated.
We didn't have any history of either one of these boys swimming in the South River in their underwear.
Other bodies were now washing up in the Chattahoochee River to the west and the north of Atlanta. 5 victims in that river in the next 6 weeks.
I said, you know, if I was doing that, I'd be throwing them off the bridge.
FBI agent Mike McComas grew up along a river in Tennessee. He knew if something were to float on downstream, it had to be dropped in the middle of a river. McComas suggested the bridge stakeouts.
We looked at remote places, dark places. We believed it would be at nighttime as opposed to daytime.
The FBI and police began night watches at 14 bridges over the Chattahoochee and South Rivers. The stakeouts were to last 4 weeks. Nothing until the very end.
We, at that point, were ready for that to be our last night.
And Wayne Williams showed up that night.
Just before 3 a.m., the station wagon drove onto the bridge.
Had he waited a couple more hours, we might not have been there.
Otherwise, we would have missed him.
Next, the night on the bridge.
You said, I know this is about those boys, isn't
Correct.
it?
Mm-hmm. That's what I said.
Pretty damning statement, don't you think?
That night on the bridge, Wayne Williams says police made him the scapegoat because he was black.
Soledad, when this case happened, if those police had arrested a white man, Atlanta would have erupted, as well as several major cities. You possibly would have had another race war.
No, said the FBI chief.
On the Atlanta Police Department side, they were looking for a white guy. So why would all of a sudden the black guy be considered a scapegoat?
Williams disputes almost everything police witnesses said about that night.
What happened that night on the bridge?
Okay, in the first place, and I'm not being facetious, but nothing happened on the bridge. That's the whole misconception.
As he tells it, there was no splash. He never stopped and didn't turn around.
So you never stopped on the bridge?
No, I didn't.
You didn't throw trash?
No.
You didn't throw anything?
No, I did not.
You didn't throw a body?
Definitely not a body, no.
His story.
I crossed the bridge. I turned off briefly after I crossed the bridge at what I called a liquor store.
Williams said he pulled into the parking lot only to look up the phone number of a singer he was trying to locate at that hour.
I turned back on the highway. I went to a Starving Marvin store. I used the telephone, and I came back.
The call didn't go through.
I got some recording, this number's not in service, and I said, well, this is a prank.
This is the closest thing to an address he had for the singer he said was Cheryl Johnson. The FBI looked hard and could never find her.
It says to me that Cheryl Johnson didn't exist, that he made it up.
Williams says only after that call from a gas station did he turn around to cross back over the bridge again. Police would stop him moments later.
You said, I know this is about those boys, isn't it?
Correct. Mm-hmm. That's what I said.
Pretty damning statement, don't you think?
No, I mean, the perception in Atlanta was, at the time, kids were missing, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the perception was a lot of young males were missing, and that's when I asked myself, this is about those kids, the boys or something like that, isn't it?
Remember what FBI agent Mike McComas said he saw when he got to the scene?
Saw a black male. He had on a baseball hat.
This is the sketch provided by the witness who saw Luby Jeter talking to a man the day Luby disappeared and died. McComas had never seen this until we came back to show it to him nearly 30 years later.
This is a real strong resemblance to the person that I talked to, Wayne Williams. He had on a baseball cap. His hair was in an afro, so this just looks like him.
Williams agreed to let McComas search his station wagon. On the floor, in the front of the back seat, he saw...
There was a nylon cord. The best that I could describe the nylon cord was a ski rope type, the woven type, and it was, my guess, about 24 inches long.
No.
Williams denies there was any such cord.
Because if that rope had been in the station wagon that night, I'm sure they would have taken it.
The fact that I didn't confiscate it doesn't make it go away. It was there.
The nylon cord would never be seen again.
Could have been the murder weapon, as far as I know.
Yet, FBI supervisors decided to let Wayne Williams go that night.
Well, first, we didn't have a body. So, secondly, there was no one who saw Wayne Williams outside of his car. There was no one that saw him throw anything overboard.
2 days later, only a mile downstream from that bridge, another body. After 2 years, one suspect now, Wayne Williams.
When we come back, the lie detector test.
It surprised him that he didn't beat that polygraph test. He was convinced he could beat a polygraph test. I said some reaction like, I'll be darned. You're the guy we've been looking for 2 years.
The second day after Wayne Williams was seen on the Chattahoochee River Bridge, the body of Nathaniel Cater washed up downstream. He was a down-on-his-luck drunk, 28 years old, but small, weighing under 150 pounds. Again, the medical examiner said Cater could have been killed, quote, with a chokehold, trapping the neck in the crook of the arm. His would be the last body found in the Atlanta murders, the 27th male victim. At Cater's funeral, Wayne Williams' father, Homer, took this photo for the Atlanta World newspaper. On June 3rd, the FBI brought Wayne in for a long night of questioning. Wayne agreed to a lie detector test.
He was as composed and calm as you can get. You got 26 bodies out there in the woods and rivers, and he's just sitting there like total control.
Richard Ratcliffe was the FBI polygraph examiner.
I said, I don't care what you were doing on the bridge. I don't care what you threw in the river. If it wasn't a little boy's body, you do fine this test.
He told Williams in advance what he would ask him.
Did you kill Nathaniel Cater, or did you kill him that night that you were on the bridge, and did you throw Nathaniel Cater into the Chattahoochee River? And when I ran that test, it's like, wow, this is it.
Wayne Williams flunked all 3 questions.
I said, well, this test would reflect that you did kill Nathaniel Cater, and you threw his body, that was his body, you threw off the bridge that night.
The polygraph measures sweating, the heartbeat, blood pressure, all rise with tension.
You breathe a little faster. You have a hard time getting your breath. You sweat a little more. He did all this.
Wayne Williams took the test 3 times. He failed each time.
I said some reaction like, I'll be darned. You're the guy we've been looking for 2 years. It surprised him that he didn't beat that polygraph test. He was convinced he could beat a polygraph test. He sat there and studied it, and he said, what's this question right here? And I said, that's pretty good. That's, did you cause the death of Nathaniel Cater? And then he said, what's this question? I said, well, did you throw his body into the Chattahoochee River that night?
With the media waiting outside the FBI, the mayor's spokesman, Angelo Fuster, was called in to handle the press.
And in comes Homer Williams.
Fuster asked Homer, a press photographer, why he was inside the building, trying to get a scoop on the suspect.
And he said, no, that's my son. And I thought, oh, geez.
Homer told Fuster.
They detained him and impounded my car for littering. They detained him for littering, is what he said. And I said, that doesn't sound right. This is at night. And I said, littering? He said, yeah, he was driving over this bridge and he stopped to throw some garbage, and boy, they rushed him and stopped him. And at that point, I said to him, Homer, I don't think you need to talk to me anymore.
We asked Wayne Williams about throwing garbage off the bridge. He denied his father ever said that.
Your father said you stopped to get rid of some trash.
No, my father never said that. I never said that, and my father never said it.
While father and son were inside the FBI, evidence technicians were combing the Williams home. The FBI's top fiber expert, Harold Dedman, led the search. In Wayne's bedroom, he took clippings from a purple bedspread and from a yellow blanket.
The yellow blanket was located under Wayne Williams' bed.
On the floor, a green carpet. This is a blow-up of those carpet fibers.
They're the only company to produce a fiber like this.
But Larry Peterson was still in the dark.
I had no idea there was a bridge incident.
He had been called to the FBI office to help search this station wagon, but not told why. Then he spotted FBI techs returning from their search, and so he went out to the home to snip fibers for himself.
Saw the green carpet.
Did you feel this is it?
You know, I really didn't.
Because it was a middle-class home, a young man living with his parents. But Peterson thought,
I'm going to run these back to the lab and just look. I started with the green carpet. Once I put that sample under the microscope, I mean, I knew instantly that that was it.
You knew that they had the killer.
I knew that was it. And I had made hundreds and hundreds of comparisons to carpeting and various suspects and environments before, and nothing was even close until that night.
Did you stand up from your microscope and scream, "Hallelujah, we've caught the guy"?
I really did just want to say, oh my God.
Still, Wayne Williams was allowed to go home that night.
And make a couple of other errands, so I was in the area, and I just decided.
In the morning, Wayne Williams called in reporters and TV crews, who agreed not to show his face.
He asked what was dropped in the river. Nothing.
He acknowledged he failed a lie detector test. Then, asked about the victims, Wayne Williams said this.
Some of these kids are in places they don't have no business being at certain times of the day and night. Some of them don't have no kind of home supervision, and they're just running around in the streets wild. And I'm saying, when you're doing that, that's not giving anybody a license to kill, but you opening yourself up for all kinds of things.
We asked Wayne what he meant.
When you say, that's not giving anybody a license to kill, but you're opening yourself up for all kinds of things.
My point is very simple. All right, if you're out roaming the streets, like not all of these, but some of these victims were, you put yourself in a position for bad things to happen.
For days, the district attorney was reluctant to take Wayne Williams to court based on fibers alone. While he hesitated, the FBI, police, and media all kept a watch on Wayne. In this parking lot one day, he showed an angry face to a CNN camera crew.
Well, hey, I'm telling you to quit following me, because I'm saying at this point you're following me and you're on private property. And if I were you, I'd get the hell off.
Finally, on Father's Day evening, 1981, detectives arrived to arrest Wayne Williams for the murder of Nathaniel Cater. Once he disappeared in the back of this police car, Williams would never be free again, to this day.
Ahead, the trial, and a blow-up on the witness stand.
I was probably my own worst enemy. I could see almost the shock in the jurors' faces.
When he said, "You want the real Wayne Williams, you've got him," I think the jury understood that.
Wayne Williams would go on trial at the start of 1982. Testimony would last almost 2 months. It would be a trial like no other before. A case built on fibers, no fingerprints, no murder weapon, no apparent motive. Now remember, you're one of the jurors. 3 choices: guilty, innocent, or simply not proven. This time, the verdict's yours. Mary Welcome was Wayne Williams' defense attorney.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
This was her first murder trial.
What was he like when you met him?
A most unlikely killer.
Yeah? Why?
Because he just didn't appear to be the kind of person that could strangle anyone or have the strength to.
To her, Wayne Williams seemed gentle, childlike.
One day I left him in jail. I said, Wayne, is there anything I can bring? Would you like anything? He said, would you bring me some bubble gum?
Williams was charged with and tried for only 2 murders, Nathaniel Cater and Jimmy Payne, both adults found in the same area of the Chattahoochee River. Cater's body was nude, but his hair was caked with mud.
Digging through that silt, I was able to recover dog hair and fibers that were close to his scalp.
The dog hair was consistent with Sheba, the Wayne Williams family dog. In Cater's hair was one of those unusual green carpet fibers. Under a microscope, Peterson could see the boomerang shape, just like those in the Williams family carpet. This is an actual piece of that carpet, which the FBI's Harold Dedman said was quite rare.
It's got an unusual carpet fiber. It was manufactured for a limited amount of time. It was a 10-year-old carpet.
On Jimmy Payne, the other victim, Dedman found yellow rayon fibers stuck to his cotton shorts, fibers consistent with the blanket under Wayne's bed.
I personally took the cutting from the yellow blanket that was under the bed.
This evidence slide contains the yellow blanket fibers that Dedman clipped that night, magnified by our own video camera. But when Larry Peterson had returned that June for a second search a couple weeks later,
There was no yellow blanket to be found that I could find.
There are a lot of things in your case that disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
You had a lot of disappearances. Yellow blanket
Yes.
disappeared.
In the first place, there was never a yellow blanket.
There were fibers of a yellow blanket.
There were fibers alleged to have come from a yellow blanket. Nobody's been able to produce a yellow blanket because, quite simply, and I'm just being very blunt with you, there was no yellow blanket.
Or maybe you got rid of it in between the first time they searched and when they come back.
It seems like to me, if I were a police officer, I would have confiscated the blanket too. It doesn't make sense.
the prosecution was allowed to bring in 10 other deaths. Among them, Patrick Baltazar, Eric Middlebrooks, JoJo Bell, to try to show a pattern.
This is a chart showing fibers that were recovered from the body of Patrick Baltazar.
Fibers consistent with that blanket, with Wayne Williams' bedspread, the green carpet, hair from Wayne's dog, plus a leather jacket.
The jacket was, as I recall, was hanging in his closet.
And, Dedman told the jury, 2 human hairs were found inside Patrick Baltazar's shirt.
These 2 hairs were consistent with originating from Williams.
Then there was Eric Middlebrooks, and the fibers stuck to his tennis shoe. This is a blow-up of those red fibers. The same kind were in a car Williams was driving that year.
This puts Middlebrooks both in the interior and of the 79 Ford and the trunk of the 79 Ford.
Did you ever meet any of the young men who were victims?
No, I did not.
Never met them once?
No.
Not once?
No.
It's incalculable, the odds that that they were not in contact with him in his environment.
The fiber evidence is your biggest obstacle.
That fiber evidence may well have been manipulated in this case. Point blank and simple. Simply because they had a suspect, it was Wayne, and that manipulation no doubt has continued even after my trial and up until this point.
There were just too many fibers placed on too many bodies.
Mike Derham, in blue, seen here the night of the verdict, was one of the jurors.
What would the chances be of finding the same, all of these fibers? The chances would be just astronomical.
This witness, Robert Henry, did place Williams with the very last victim, Nathaniel Cater. Henry worked with Cater. He said he saw him leaving this theater with Wayne Williams on the night of the bridge incident. Henry has no doubt, even today, about what he saw.
We were holding hands, you know, like male and female. Well, if you were holding hands with one of my co-workers and both of you are males, what am I supposed to do? Turn my head?
What's up, people?
The next time I saw him, he was in the courtroom.
When Wayne Williams took the stand, he swore he never met Nathaniel Cater. On the evening Henry said he saw them, Wayne testified he was home. sick and asleep in bed. His mother and father, now deceased, backed him up. Homer Williams said he had the white station wagon until almost midnight. Under cross-examination, in his third day on the stand, Wayne Williams blew up at prosecutor Jack Mallard.
That morning, he was a complete different person. Immediately, he started attacking. He came out of the chute like a bull. When he said, you want the real Wayne Williams, you've got him, I think all of us, the jury, understood that, yeah.
I was probably my own worst enemy. I was an arrogant, bus-headed idiot at the time, and I played right into these people's hands. I could see almost the shock in the jurors' faces if they said, my God, is this the same Wayne that was up here yesterday? I could see that.
Patrick Baltazar's stepmother was watching in court that day.
I'm like, this man gotta be crazy. This man, I mean, it's like he's saying, you know, yeah, I killed him, but you better prove it. You know, can you prove it? He was doing everything he can to outsmart everybody. And it was like, I did it, but can you prove I did it?
Camille Bell, Yusef's mother, believed Wayne to be innocent. She feels that last day on the witness stand convicted him.
And then when he flared off, then they were ready to say, well, okay, so he does have fire.
When you got angry with the prosecutor, you said, you're a drop shot.
I called him a drop shot.
What's a drop shot? What's that mean?
Quite simply, in our vernacular, a drop shot is a guy who's not worth much of anything. You know, just drop him and shoot him and get him out of the way. In other words, you're useless.
We reminded Wayne that he also called poor black children on the streets the same thing, drop shots.
That does not make me a murderer simply because I said somebody is a drop shot or because I called him a drop shot. That does not make Wayne Williams a murderer because I say somebody is a street urchin. You know, come on, we're talking about murder. The fact is, I didn't kill anybody.
The jury didn't come back until late the second evening. The verdict, guilty, on both counts of murdering the two adults, Cater and Payne. Wayne Williams was sentenced to serve 2 life terms.
People only wanted to look at the negative side because they wanted in their heart for this case to be over and for Wayne to be the Atlanta monster. They wanted closure at any cost.
Leaving court, Homer Williams walked by the prosecutor's table.
He looked at us and called us sons of bitches.
Still to come, no verdict in the deaths of any of the children.
Even if it takes 30 trials, I don't care. You know, prove it.
Defense attorney Mary Welcome did not expect the guilty verdict.
I was crestfallen.
So why do you think the jury convicted him?
Because he might have been guilty. Because he might have been.
During the trial, medical examiner Robert Stivers told the jury there had been very few strangulations of black males in the years before these murders began, and none at all with bodies left in rivers or by the roadside since that night Wayne Williams was stopped leaving this bridge.
They were convinced that the crimes had stopped because Wayne had been arrested.
And I think what happened is people stopped looking and stopped counting.
Murders have continued in Atlanta. Shootings of black men, stabbings of black women, but not strangulations like before. Not black youths dumped far from where they were killed. Detective Welcome Harris would stay on the police force another 25 years. We asked him how many more children were killed the way they were in the 80s.
None that I can recall. None that I can recall.
Wayne Williams' appeals would drag on for years. He almost won the first one. Georgia Supreme Court Justice George Smith helped a colleague write a ruling that would have reversed the verdict.
He would have found that the evidence didn't support a conviction. That's what he did find originally.
but the 5 other justices resisted.
When we met, they pitched a royal fit. They were not going to overturn the conviction. The 5 of them were.
In the end, all the justices, except Smith, agreed to uphold the conviction. Wayne Williams said the court was bullied into making its U-turn.
I think the pressure came from as high as the White House, and we'll leave it at that.
Not so, said George Smith, now retired from the court, but still practicing law in his 90s.
I can't imagine that it happened in a case like this. I can't imagine it happening in any case, but certainly this case, it didn't reach to the White House.
Smith did write a dissenting opinion. He said the fiber evidence fell short of scientific certainty, and the prosecution should not have been allowed to use the so-called pattern evidence on 10 other murders.
I said the only similarity in the crimes in this case is the fact that all of them were dead.
Smith was denounced on the floor of the Georgia legislature.
I was an N lover. You know what the N stands for.
Mary Welcome agreed when Justice Smith wrote the defense attorneys were ineffective.
We were rendered ineffective. We were rendered incompetent because of the lack of funds, lack of time, and the lack of resources. Absolutely.
Things did go wrong in the trial that should not have. An ambulance driver suggested an explosive motive for Wayne Williams. This from CNN's report at the time.
Bobby Tolan said Williams asked him once, had he ever considered how many blacks could be eliminated by killing one nigger child?
But unknown to either side, Tolan was not his real name. In fact, he had a criminal record. He testified under a false name, had an extensive arrest record under his real name.
I'm not sure that we knew all of that at the time, or it was disclosed to us.
Rogers' home is but 8 blocks away from where he was found today.
Then there was the murder of Larry Rogers, a retarded youth. This witness testified she saw Rogers slumped over in a station wagon as Wayne Williams drove away. But another person also saw Rogers in that station wagon at that same intersection that day. He helped a police artist draw this sketch. It does not look like Wayne Williams. However, the defense never called the other witness to ask about the sketch.
No, I don't even remember seeing that.
Supporters of Wayne Williams say there was one murder which shows the fiber evidence could be faulty. The death of 12-year-old Clifford Jones, left by a dumpster in an alley on a summer night in 1980. Some of those unusual green carpet fibers were on his body. Yet another boy said he saw a coin laundry operator kill Clifford Jones. Detective Welcome Harris said the boy was not believable.
He exaggerated stuff. In other words, he was open to suggestions. And if you said that Mickey Mouse was up there, and if he sensed that you wanted him to say that, he said, yeah.
Wayne supporters point out the laundry manager failed 2 police lie detector tests, but few are aware of a third test given by the FBI examiner, Richard Ratcliffe. The result?
In layman's terms, he passed. He wasn't involved in killing Jones.
Only days after Wayne Williams was convicted of killing 2 adults, Atlanta's police commissioner closed the books on 21 other murder victims, declaring they, too, were killed by Williams. Most were children, among them Clifford Jones and Yusef Bell. But without trials, the mothers were left without a verdict, one way or the other, in the deaths of all of the children. Camille Bell.
Even if it takes 30 trials, I don't care. Prove it.
The prosecutor's answer, it would serve no purpose.
You can only serve 1 life sentence.
Just ahead.